Hey everyone, so check this out. This is the original Apple iPhone SE. It came out way back in March of 2016, and that brings up a pretty fair question here in 2025. Is this thing still usable? I mean, it's nearly a decade old, which in phone years is like ancient history. But there's something about this phone that people just can't quit. And I think if you're watching this, you probably fall into one of three camps. Maybe you're thinking about picking one of these up for super cheap, or maybe you're one of the legends who is still using this phone today, or maybe you're like me and you're just here for a little bit of nostalgia for what some people call the best iPhone Apple ever made. So today we're going to take an honest look. We'll talk about what made this phone so special when it was released. Then we'll dive into the review, covering the design and display, the real-world performance you can expect today, the battery situation, the surprisingly charming camera, and the really important stuff around software and security. And at the end, I'll give you my final verdict on how this little phone really holds up in 2025. So to really get why this phone was such a big deal, we have to go back to 2016. At the time, phones were just getting bigger and bigger. Apple itself was pushing the larger iPhone 6s and the huge 6s Plus. But there was this whole group of people who just didn't want a giant phone. And Apple knew it. They had sold over 30 million 4-inch iPhones in 2015 alone. So at their event in March 2016, they did something kind of brilliant. They unveiled the iPhone SE, which stood for Special Edition. And the formula was genius. They took the beloved classic pocket-friendly design of the iPhone 5s, and they packed it with the guts of their flagship phone, the iPhone 6s. It was like putting a modern racing engine inside a classic car. It had the same powerful Apple A9 chip and the same awesome 12-megapixel camera as the top-of-the-line model. Apple called it the most powerful 4-inch phone ever, and they were right. And they launched it for just $399. It wasn't just a cheaper iPhone, it was a smaller, powerful iPhone with almost no compromises. And that's why even today it has such a legendary reputation. Okay, let's start the review with the part that everyone remembers, the design. And honestly, this thing still feels incredible to hold. It's made from this solid block of aluminum with these iconic matte chamfered edges, and it weighs just 113 grams. It feels less like a fragile piece of glass and more like a well-made tool. But the real magic, the thing you totally forget until you hold it again, is the one-handed use. You can actually reach every single corner of the screen with just your thumb. Remember that? It's a feeling that's basically gone from modern smartphones. Now that screen is a 4-inch Retina display, and by today's standards, it is tiny. The resolution is 1136 by 640 pixels, which is about 326 pixels per inch, so it's actually still really sharp, just as sharp as an iPhone 11 for example, but the screen-to-body ratio is only about 60%, which means you get these huge bezels at the top and bottom, and that small size is, well, it's a double-edged sword. For modern apps, which are all designed for huge screens, it feels really cramped. Trying to type on this little keyboard takes some getting used to, and reading a long article or email means a lot of scrolling. It's definitely something you'll either love for its compactness or hate for its limitations. But then there's this. Yep, a 3.5mm headphone jack. In 2025, this is a massive feature. For anyone who loves their wired headphones and hates dongles, this little phone is suddenly a fantastic music player. So what about performance? Inside we've got that Apple A9 chip and 2 GB of RAM. Back in 2016, this was flagship level stuff. In 2025, well, it's a different story. For the absolute basics, it's okay. Making calls, sending texts and iMessages, listening to Spotify, basic navigation with Google Maps, it can still do all of that just fine. But the second you try to do anything more demanding, you feel its age. Loading modern websites with lots of ads is sluggish. Opening and switching between apps like Instagram or Facebook, there's a noticeable lag. You can't really multitask, and some apps will just crash if you push them too hard. Let's be real, it's a slow phone by today's standards. But here's where a really interesting thing has happened. For a lot of people, that slowness has actually become a feature. The small, cramped screen isn't great for endless scrolling, and the slow performance makes you think twice before opening up an addictive app. It's become this amazing digital detox tool. It's a phone that does what you need, but it doesn't constantly beg for your attention. And in 2025, that's a pretty appealing idea. Okay, let's talk the battery. This is probably the most important part of the video if you're actually thinking of buying one. The phone originally came with a tiny 1624 mAh battery. And when it was new, the battery life was actually great because it was powering such a small screen. But we're almost a decade later. Any original battery in one of these phones is going to be completely cooked. It's the #1 deal breaker that makes this phone unusable as a daily driver if you don't fix it. So let me be perfectly clear. If you buy an iPhone SE in 2025, a battery replacement is not optional, it is mandatory. You can get it done at a third-party repair shop for about $50 to $60, or you can buy a DIY kit for around $35 if you're feeling brave. But even with a brand new battery, you need to manage your expectations. I did some testing, and with heavy use like gaming or watching video, you'll be lucky to get more than a couple of hours out of it. With light use, just texts and calls, it can get you through the day, but that's it. And this brings me to a crucial point about value. You might find this phone for say $150, but after you spend another $50 on a battery, your true cost is $200. For just a little bit more, you can get a used iPhone SE 2nd generation, which is a vastly better and more modern phone, so keep that in mind. Now for my favorite part, and something that genuinely surprised me, the camera. The main camera on the back is a 12 megapixel shooter, and it's the exact same one that was in the iPhone 6s, and it's still really good. It can even shoot 4K video at 30 frames per second, which is pretty wild for a phone this old and cheap. But what's really cool about it is the look it produces. Modern phones use so much AI and computational photography to process images. This phone doesn't do that. The result is a photo that feels a bit more honest, a bit more like film. It has character. There's this whole retro trend happening right now where people are seeking out old digital cameras for that vintage vibe, and this phone's camera fits right in. The front camera though, oof. It's a 1.2 megapixel camera that shoots 720p video. It is functional. For a quick video call, it's fine, but for selfies, it's pretty rough. It's definitely the weakest part of the camera system. Alright, this next part is, look, it's really important. We have to talk about the software. The iPhone SE got an amazing 6 years of major software updates, but its journey ended with iOS 15. It cannot update to iOS 16, 17, or anything newer, and in 2025, that's a huge problem. First, there's app compatibility. More and more app developers are requiring at least iOS 16 to run their apps. The ones you'll lose first are the important ones, like banking apps. Many users are reporting that their bank will stop supporting iOS 15 this year if they haven't already. So your banking app might work today, but it could stop working with the very next update. But the biggest issue, and this is the deal breaker, is security. As of March 2025, Apple has officially stopped providing security updates for iOS 15. Let me put that simply. Using this phone for sensitive data is like leaving your front door unlocked. It is no longer safe for things like online banking, work email, or anything that requires real security. This is not something to take lightly. So after all that, how does the first generation iPhone SE really hold up in 2025? It's a phone with 3 different stories. First, as your main primary do-everything phone, I have to say absolutely not. I just can't recommend it. The security risks are too high, the app support is disappearing, and the performance and battery just aren't practical for a modern daily driver. But as a secondary device, this is where it gets interesting. For the nostalgia lover, it's a beautiful piece of tech history that's a joy to use. For the digital minimalist, it's one of the best dumb phones you can buy, giving you just the essentials without the addiction. And as a dedicated iPod or music player with that headphone jack, it is perfect. And that brings us to the third story, the smart alternative. If you love this small design and you're on a budget, but you need a phone that actually works as a primary device in 2025, please spend the extra $30 to $80 and get a used iPhone SE 2nd or 3rd generation. They are worlds better with modern chips, full software and security support, and much better cameras. They are just a much smarter investment. So that's the story of the original iPhone SE. It's complicated, but it's still undeniably special. It's a reminder of a time when phones were designed for our hands, not to consume our lives. But I'd love to know what you all think. Did you have one of these? Are you maybe still rocking one for certain things? Let me know your stories and memories down in the comments below. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you found this useful or just enjoyed the trip down memory lane, definitely hit that like button and consider subscribing for more videos like this. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.